So welcome everybody to Ladies Who Lunch Conversations. This is May, and we have a lot to get to today, so I'm just going to be inviting our May guest. Her name is Marlena Santoyo, and this is really, I'm going to say, like a networking story, and that's what a lot of what the Ladies Who Lunch is all about. But Marlena is a director with the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. And in light of the ongoing war in the Ukraine and Europe, I thought this is like a perfect subject matter. But I was introduced to the organization through my cousin, Marian DeLeo, the Academy Award winner for her documentary film, The Chernobyl Heart. And we'll get into a little bit of the story in a minute. But it was Mother's Day, so we had a beautiful day yesterday with my mother. That you can see we had a lovely menu that we did up. And one of the things I wanted to incorporate, besides for Mother's Day, but using flowers as a symbol for peace. Every peace treaty or peace accord, the signings, they always have beautiful flowers. And then I see Marlena. She's going to be coming in a second here. So
I'm here with you. Good.
Yes, I can see you. So this is great. Whoops, we're going to go live, the two of us, I think. Oh, you're turning sideways.
Yes, I remember that you
Yes,
said
you're
that
live now. You're absolutely live now, so that's good. Let's see if we can get both of us on there. And there we go. Back and forth. So the two of us are on. So I was just explaining about the flowers that I chose for the table, not only for Mother's Day, but because of you and your organization. So flowers represent peace. So the peony is my favorite, but it is famous and they said culturally meaningful around the world. It connects us sort of in a way with peace and prosperity. And besides, it's very fragrant, so I wish we had that capability here. So welcome, Marlena. It's really an honor to have you here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an author and a writer, and my books here, The Art of the Garnish and The Hamptons and Long Island Homegrown Cookbook. So I love doing the tablescape, so it's all about, family and food and so on. And I also contributed the 3 chapters to the Savoring Gotham book, and that's where the concept for the Ladies Who Lunch came in, because that's one of the 3 chapters that I wrote about. These Ladies Who Lunch were sort of icons of New York, and they were all about community and philanthropy. So they were sort of making cities run, which is most important. And community is everything, I think, and being connected.
Agreed.
Right? So I was explaining how I first got introduced to you through my cousin, Marian DeLeo. She's a Academy Award winner for her documentary, Chernobyl Heart. So when I told her I wanted to do something with peace and, in light of the war, so she turned me on to your organization, and I signed up right away. I was right in, and I attended one of the seminars, and there was workshops and things that were going on. So, just doing a little bit of background, I saw that it's called WILPF. It was hard to say, but it's the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. So I'll read from that. It's they envision a transformed world at peace where there's racial, social, and economic justice for all peoples everywhere, which we need. And the members create a peaceful transformation they wish to see in the world by making connections. And it was founded in 1915 during World War I with Jane Addams as its first president. And she was also the first woman in the U.S. to earn, I say rather than win, a Nobel Peace Prize. So that's very, very, I think, remarkable. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the organization and some of the works that you're doing. Oh, I love that you have Stop the War in the background. I love it.
Yes. Well, I decided that it would be appropriate to have a few of the things that over the years have been important to me. And of course, sorry, I'm holding up my cell phone.
I'm going to say cheers to you, right?
Well, wealth, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom started at the time of World War I. And of course, its aim was to stop all wars. But obviously, you can see this continues. So it's a struggle that myself and many others, both of WILPF and other organizations that I've been a part of. So I thought I would just show you a bit of some of the places and things that I've done, both with WILPF and otherwise. And right there, you can see a wall hanging. And that had to do with when I went to Cuba many years ago. And I went with the Quakers. I am a Quaker. And went to 6 of the 7 Quaker meeting houses, which is what some people might call a synagogue or a church. And when I first went there, people were sure that I might be maybe a spy, if you will.
A spy?
But yes, yes. And the fact that I spoke Spanish, and somehow or another we connected. And it was my listening and the people of Cuba having a chance to support the Cuban Revolution, which was what Fidel Castro had been about. But at the same time, he, like the rest of us, made mistakes.
Sure, sure. I know. I've been to Havana in Cuba, and it was life-changing for me. So I'm keen to hear
Yes.
this story.
I'm glad that you went. Well, the first time I went was with WILPF and with a woman who was at the time the executive director, Marilyn Clement, who for me was a role model, who was active and welcomed us when we arrived at 3 a.m. And then we went on to meet with La Federación de Mujeres, the Women's Federation. And we were, I believe the number was 60 from the US and other places around the continent.
Right.
So that was part of the work that WILPF has done, making these connections and believing that we should and still should end the embargo on Cuba, which means that there's so many limitations on what is available to the Cuban people.
Right.
And another time I went to Guatemala, and I went with the Peace Brigade.
Oh.
And I'm going to show you a photograph that I took.
Here.
And that photograph happened to be at a 24-hour vigil. And the reason we were there was that the US was funding a government which was really killing off its own people. Oh. And so as an American, I was quite safe because the US, as I said, government was doing this evil work. And they didn't, so the government did not want to make a big hullabaloo by killing an American.
Right.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask, so did you connect with the women down there in Guatemala, or was it mainly?
Well, I did. I went with, I actually was what was called what was the term? Well, an escort was the term, but it really meant a bodyguard. I was a bodyguard, if you will, just from being an American, to mothers and families of the disappeared.
Oh, okay. That's
yes.
Interesting to me. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Well, these were men and women, but primarily women, who um, recognized that their husbands and their brothers had been disappeared, which was the term that they chose to use rather than assassinated. And
Right.
these folks who were disappeared were activists, both
Politically.
political activists and farm workers. And so people like myself, and I remember at the same time I went, there was a woman who was a nun from Florida, and she and I would accompany um, the mothers and families of the disappeared. And
Was your family worried? You know, you're down there kind of by yourself, or did they think they'd never see you again?
I'm glad you brought that up. As a matter of fact, I have two children who were both in their 20s, and they were really angry that I was doing this. But they recognized, I remember my son took me to the airport, and it was such a relief. He told me, Mom, I really respect you
Oh,
for, yes. And I didn't think he would get there, but it was very meaningful, because what I told my children is the two of you are going to be all right. Chances are I'm going to be back and back in a month's time. But
right.
if I'm not, no matter what, you have survival skills.
Oh,
And
because you taught them that, so you sort
I
of passed
tried.
on. Yes,
I
yes.
tried.
So,
But
in
like
a
each
larger
of
sense,
us,
when you went down to Guatemala and you were helping these missing people, what survival skills did you impart to them?
well, first of all, I was bilingual,
Hmm.
as are my two children. Um, so on one occasion, we met with an American legislator who said, well, of course, we know that the US government is the finest government in the world. And some of us just rolled our eyes, because we knew that unfortunately my government had been responsible for various coups, both in Guatemala and in other places, and had tried to assassinate Fidel Castro. So there's kind of like a positive and a negative.
How did you
And
did you help them find their loved ones, or how did you help them?
well, I helped them as they walked into the various communities and met with people, and publicized what my government and theirs were doing. And they were just doing their best as activists and wealth people here in this country
Hmm.
to um, to make public and to let the people know that when we work in community, we can make a difference. And to answer your question, no, I did not. Uh, I think these people who were disappeared were not heard from again. And on one occasion, when I went to um, Guatemala, I worked with um, the Peace Brigade, and I accompanied a family whose daughter had been disappeared.
Oh,
And I stayed with them until the other daughter could go off to Cuba and be safe.
be safe. Yeah.
So I lived with them, mainly eating rice and beans.
Well, at least
And
healthy. I mean, it's good for you.
yes, you're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
You're right.
That's
Hmm.
good. Now, I mean, I have to admit, I had never heard of the organization before Marianne had told me about it, and I got very intrigued by it. Just speaking for myself, I think it's like such an important organization that some people, hadn't heard about it. And in today's world, where we need advocates for peace and freedom, if people want to get involved, I mean, do they just go to the website and sign up, or how does it?
That's great. WILF, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, is a national and international organization. And you or anyone else can go to WILPF.com and see some of the different work that we've done. And one of the things that I'm going to bring up is the work that we've done in the Middle East. And I myself happen to be Jewish, and I support peace and justice and equality for the Palestinian people, where they are undergoing occupation. And there's a very strong Middle Eastern group, and the two coordinators are Odile, who is actually from France, and Barbara Taft. And so there's so many ways in which WILF has made their voice and their work for peace be heard. And we're active in the UN.
I was just going to ask about that, other organizations that you network with and coordinate with.
Exactly. I think that's extremely important. The idea, for example, there's Veterans for Peace, and we've worked with and supported them as well. And I think working in coalition is what makes us and the work of peace, with just the name Women's International League for Peace and Justice.
Right, and freedom.
That's what we need to be about.
I'm sorry, I don't know this, but is there a more concerted effort because of what's been happening in Ukraine or other places globally? Like, how does one prioritize? I mean, have you ever seen things so bad? I know there's like three questions in there, but how do you pick where, or do you try to do it all? I mean,
it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's difficult. And as a matter of fact, to decide, because the fact of the matter is that, as has been pointed out, in the Ukraine, it's people who look like you and me. But the similar things are happening not only in Palestine, but in Lebanon and in areas in Africa. And personally, I have decided that when I feel that the Ukraine or something is really popular in our newspapers and in the New York Times, that I decide to frequently work on other areas that are not being highlighted.
Highlighted or showcased 24/7 on the
Yes,
news.
exactly.
We see it. The Vietnam War was probably the first one where it was televised, but now with Ukraine, you see it on almost every show, constantly. It's heartbreaking. It really is. But I understand what you say, that there's other places in the world that, need our attention. And, do you think that women are particularly skilled at this, that they can affect change, in a way because they're nurturing, or, what makes your organization unique?
Well, thank you. I'm really glad that you pointed that out. But
Oh,
yes, it's the women who frequently, for example, right now with the issue of Roe v. Wade, and war. war is uh, being waged by Putin in Russia. And so frequently it's the males, and the wives and the daughters are the ones who are trying to counteract
Right.
this effect.
Yeah.
Um, the issue of guns in the United States, um, the right to health care, the right to a living wage. These are the sorts of things that uh, should be highlighted. And I believe that we women do exactly that. And I think that we're less likely to yield to these lobbyists who will pay lots of money so that we just mouth their viewpoint, which is against
Is
the
there a
best
lot
interests.
of like within the organization? Is there a lot of like especially in times of pandemic, how you meet and talk and decide on issues and coordination? So is there ways for you all to continue communicating with one another? Is it very open, that everyone has a voice within the organization? And how much time do you spend, or would an average person spend, volunteering?
Well, that's open to you because, for one thing, every 3 years, WILF has a Congress in which people meet, and it usually lasts for 4 or 5 days. Um, Up until recently, I used to go up to Vermont, where Robin Lloyd um, had the gathering at the farm, and it was and that's where, as a matter of fact, my daughter came with me, Anna
Oh,
Santoyo, and after that experience, she decided to join WILF.
oh, wonderful, wonderful. You got a
Yeah,
legacy going on there, so with the family.
I'm glad to say that that is exactly the case.
Yeah.
Also, WILF has become a supporter of Reverend Barber's and Reverend Liz Theodorus' Poor People's Campaign. And so when we talk about coalition and the Poor People's Campaign, which was really started, initiated, if you will, by Martin Luther King.
Mm.
And so um, recognizing that so often it's the poor and people of color who are
Pay the price, yeah,
exactly.
that they pay
And
the price.
I wanted to take the time to, pardon me, to say that not only do I have,
Oh, oh, you got your ladies who lunch fork. So, Bill, my
yes,
esteemed cameraman,
yes,
Marty Scorsese. So this way, when you are dining with your family and friends, it says ladies who lunch, folks. So thank you for pointing that out, Marlene. I appreciate that.
and
And
at the same time, I am going to hold up for you a goblet which I got in Palestine.
oh
And I
wow,
want to drink to you the work that you're doing, as well as
oh,
Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and all the many and varied ways in which we women can and will make a difference.
oh, cheers to that. Oh, you're gonna make me cry. It's very emotional. But I think that women supporting women and makes such a difference. So often people say, well, what can I do? This is overwhelming. But if we take little steps one at a time, it starts that way. I'm a besides being a writer, author, and supporting women's issues, but as a garden designer, you have to have a sense of patience and curiosity, and that you are hopeful. And I think that these kinds of organizations and the kind of work that you do, it's scary sometimes, but it does cumulatively, make such a difference. So I toast you and to what you're doing. So now just like a little bit of fun, I'm gonna, pivot because I know the time is going quickly. But I wanted to ask, I mean, as the writer of the book, The Art of the Garnish, I have to ask, do you have a favorite cocktail? Do you have a favorite drink?
Oh, interesting. All right. I really like amaretto.
Oh, I've never.
And amaretto mixed with vodka, if you will,
Oh,
is a delicious treat.
oh,
So give that a try. And as a matter of fact, amaretto, if you ever make bread pudding, making
do
bread
I?
pudding
Yes.
with amaretto and blueberries, give that a try.
Oh wow, I'll have to tell when after my father died, my mother lived with us for a while till her condo got completed, and I used to make the bread, and then she started doing. She made it so much better than I did, so she makes bread every week, and it's fantastic. But if I
Oh, how
tell her,
wonderful.
and she just started making cinnamon raisin yesterday, right, Bill? And now
Really.
tell her about this. So the bread pudding, is the consequence because some of the, the ends and things like that we accumulate from the week before.
And
But
that would be delicious with cinnamon, come to think
yes,
of it. Yes,
oh,
combining the cinnamon, the amaretto, and frozen blueberries. Ah,
well, I grow blueberries, so I'm going to pick them in not too short a time from my front garden. So
oh,
I'll
wonderful.
yeah, yeah. No, I think it's going to
Lucky
be
you.
very, and it takes some work too, to be able to have it. So we grow a number of our vegetables. We just had a homegrown asparagus and ginger soup, for example.
Really?
Yeah, we grow our own asparagus. So I
Oh,
think,
I've been trying to grow asparagus.
yeah,
Have yet to be successful, I must admit.
yeah, it takes some patience, but
Yes.
we started it some years ago, and they just come back better and better. It's a beautiful ornamental grass after the asparagus comes up, but they last for what, 30 years, Bill?
20 years.
So once you start it, you're gonna have it. So I encourage you to continue. It's just there's nothing like it for sure. But we grow the usual things also, tons of garlic and tomatoes and whatever.
Hmm.
Do you have a garden?
Well, I have a bit of a garden in front, and on my deck in the back, I'm growing a few different things, including kale
Mm,
and radishes, and trying to remember what else.
radishes,
Um,
good.
oh, string beans.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the
Hmm.
lettuces in the early spring are good. We get a ton of arugula, that comes back every year.
Yes. I love arugula and
Yeah.
cilantro. That they're
Sila.
kind of iffy, but they're two wonderful things to have.
They are, you almost can't get enough of it. We have a little mini orchard also that we grow apples and peaches. We get a ton of peaches.
Do you really?
Yeah. Yeah, the apricots have been a bust for us, so we finally took that one down, and we're going to get a new tree this year. But it was beautiful; they would blossom, but then the fruits just never, really rise. But
My understanding is that you have to have at least two of them so that they can cross pollinate.
that is true for the apples. There's the male and the female. And so we have the female up front, it was so pretty, and then the male in the orchard. But for the peaches, at least the varieties or cultivars that I have, we don't need to have, they
Oh,
just
really?
yeah.
Oh, I must tell you, I also have two fig trees.
Oh, that's very Mediterranean,
Yes.
and people love that. My garden clients love that too. It's such a source of pride for them to grow figs. And my friend from the New York Botanical Garden where I work, he says, Americans always fret about growing their figs, but in Italy they just grow through the cracks in the sidewalk.
Oh, my goodness.
It's
Yes.
so easy.
Wow.
So, do
And
you
I
cook?
love figs. And little by little, at first I didn't get any, and then I got two or three, and I prune it down,
Oh, good.
the fig tree, so that I can reach the figs.
Good idea. Good idea. And raised beds are good too. Do you cook? And
Yes.
if so, do you have a favorite dish that you make?
Well, I do cook. I love to cook, and I'm not a bad cook, if I do say so myself. I love making, well, I lived in, my children's father was Mexican,
Mm,
and I love making mole and enchiladas and oh, so many good things. And ceviche is a delicious thing
mm.
to make. Um, and in my opinion, really, Mexican cooking is just
I totally agree with you. I often say, I mean, it's so elegant too, and it is the most favorite food of Americans, and yet we seem to have almost like a monoculture, like they only have certain foods that we try, but the variety and the elegance of true Mexican food is unsurpassed. It really is. My
yes.
friend lived in Oaxaca for a long time, and it's just so many. I think also Korean food is like that, where it has
That's true.
different flavors and tastes and textures. And
Yes, come
I
to think of it.
yeah, I have two other things that I think Filipino food is going to come into its own, and
Oh,
here in this country because of similar of what you're describing. And then
hmm,
my latest is that I'm trying to advocate for like Polish or Eastern European cookbook. Bill's trying to tell me something.
Peruvian food.
Oh my God, yes, Peruvian food is just the tops. I love
really?
it.
Now, I'm not that familiar with Peruvian
Peruvian
food.
combines the best of Latino as well as it has fusion from Japan. There were so many Japanese
Oh,
that's
that's right.
yeah, so there's a lot
Huh.
of that cross cult. Plus they have so much. I mean, I worked in Ecuador for so many years doing menu development and garden design in our winters here, and Peruvian climate is somewhat similar. They've got the mountains and the beaches, but the fresh fruits, their sopas, everything is that's a story for another show. But
I'm
any
going to
last,
have to try Peruvian food.
you
I'm
will,
going to look for it in this
you will,
area.
and you have to look for my friend Melanie Asher's pisco. It's called Machu Pisco. It's absolutely divine. So that could be your new drink, also. I'll
Oh,
pay for that pisco.
all right.
Yeah. So, any last thoughts or things that you want to say? I know this time goes so fast.
Well, I guess for those of us who like to say, well, I'm not an activist, or I'm not political. I believe that all of us are political. Whether you pay taxes, um, whether you ride on the streets that our taxes pay for, whether you understand the fact that the quality of public education um, depends on what you and I advocate for, and that just deciding to take one issue and go to one demonstration, um, that's how we begin. And a good way is to start with Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. And I encourage everyone to go to WILPF.com and begin to connect with other fabulous,
Yes,
inspiring
I
women.
that's great, great advice, Marlene. Thank you. And when I sign up, you can go on to their website and you can join some of the webinars and seminars and things that they have. So you can sort of dip your toe in a little bit, and then you can become a full-fledged member of it. So thank you so much for doing this with us today. You are very inspiring to so many, and I appreciate you taking the time. So we'll stop the war. And hopefully,
Yes, and stop all wars.
yes, and for peace and freedom. So
Thank you so much, Leanne.
thank you.
Good being with all of you.
All right. Bye bye.